Okay, let's unpack this. We often hear, that women think about sex maybe, what, 6 times a day? According to self-reports, anyway.
Right, that's the number you often see cited.
But here's where it gets really interesting. There was this study where researchers gave women golf tally counters
Little clickers, yeah.
and asked them to click every time they had a sexual thought. And suddenly, that average wasn't 6. It jumped to 19 times a day.
19. Mm-hmm. That's quite a gap, isn't it?
It really is.
And what's fascinating here is exploring why that gap exists. This deep dive, we're really going to get into some of these, let's say, less obvious sides of female sexual desire.
Yeah.
We're looking at findings from psychology today, kind of digging into what women might really be thinking about sex, maybe on a more subconscious level.
And who they might be drawn to, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect, right? Even patterns in who they choose as partners.
Exactly. And like you said, we're not here to just repeat old stereotypes.
No, definitely not.
The idea is to explore some, well, unexpected truths from the research.
Yeah.
And maybe get you, the listener, thinking about your own experiences.
Thinking about things maybe you haven't really considered before. Okay, so let's start with that frequency thing.
Right. The 6 versus 19 times a day.
You mentioned the self-reports average around 6, but the tally counter pushed it way up to 19. So the Psychology Today piece explores a few reasons why this might happen.
Yeah, several possibilities.
Like, it could just be faulty memory, Maybe those quick thoughts just don't really register consciously long enough to recall later.
That makes sense. Or there's social desirability. The idea that maybe we unconsciously filter what we report, what feels, I don't know, acceptable.
Yeah, what we think we should be thinking, maybe, based on societal ideas about female sexuality.
Could be. And it raises an interesting methodological point, too, which the article acknowledges.
What's that?
Could the act of actually counting the thoughts have, well, increased them, made people more aware?
Oh, right. Like focusing on it makes it happen more often? That's possible?
It is. But if you look at this alongside other research, broader studies on gender and sexuality, a key takeaway starts to emerge.
Which is?
That women probably do think about sex more often than they consciously realize or report. It suggests maybe there's more similarity between men and women here than we commonly believe.
Interesting. So maybe our conscious mind filters things out, especially for topics that are still a bit sensitive?
It makes you wonder, yeah. What gets filtered?
Okay, so that's already kind of shaking up some common ideas. Let's move to the next point, which honestly I found even more surprising.
The subconscious attraction idea.
Yeah, this idea that women might be subconsciously attracted to both sexes. Tell us about that research.
Okay, so this involves looking at the difference between what women say turns them on their self-reported arousal and how their bodies actually respond physiologically. So in one key study, researchers showed films to both straight and lesbian women. These films had different pairings, male-female, female-female, and male-male sexual activity.
Right.
And they measured both their subjective feelings, like how aroused do you feel, and also objective physical signs of genital arousal.
Got it. Provides a more, physical measure.
Exactly. And for men in similar studies, the results tend to line up pretty well. Their self-report, their orientation, and their physical response generally match.
Okay, makes sense.
But for women, and this is where it gets really interesting, a study back in 2004 found something quite different.
What did they find?
They found that both the heterosexual and the lesbian women showed pretty similar levels of physiological arousal, like their bodies responded physically.
To all 3 types of films, male, female, 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 and male, male.
Yes. Even when their self-reported arousal was highest for the films matching their stated orientation, their physical response was broader.
Wow. Okay. That's unexpected. So what does that actually mean? Are women just attracted to everyone on some level?
Well, that's the crucial part, the interpretation. The researchers aren't saying women are all inherently bisexual. That's not the conclusion.
Okay, good clarification.
Instead, they suggest that female sexual attraction might just be more fluid, maybe more flexible than male attraction. It's less about rigid categories, perhaps.
More of a broader capacity for response, maybe?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And this idea of flexibility seems to connect with other findings, too, right? Like research on overall sex drive.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so other research found that women who reported having a stronger sex drive overall also tended to report more attraction to both sexes.
Regardless of how they identified, straight, lesbian, bi?
Exactly. Regardless of their stated identity. The Psychology Today article even uses this phrase, a generalized energizer for sexual attraction in women.
A generalized energizer. I like that.
Yeah, it's like having a higher drive just makes them more responsive across a wider spectrum of stimuli.
Huh. It definitely complicates the neat little boxes we like to put attraction into, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, so we've got frequency of thoughts, fluidity of attraction. Now, for something that feels like it comes out of left field, this idea about partners resembling brothers.
Yes, yes. That one definitely raises eyebrows. It's from a study fairly recently, 2017.
Okay. What did they do?
They had women look at photos of their male romantic partners, and then they compared those photos to pictures of 4 other men.
And one of those 4 was?
One of them was the woman's brother.
Yeah.
And they asked the women, essentially, about facial similarity.
Okay. And the result?
The result was that, consistently, the women rated their brothers as looking more similar to their romantic partners than the other unrelated men did.
Whoa. Okay. That's not something you hear every day. My first thought is, isn't that kind of weird?
It definitely seems counterintuitive at first glance. And the researchers considered obvious explanations, like maybe the partner just looks like the woman's father, and the brother also looks like the father.
Right. Shared family features.
But they proposed something a bit more complex, rooted in evolutionary biology.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Go on.
Well, one hypothesis is about finding an optimal genetic balance, like being attracted to someone who looks a bit like family cardinals, signals some genetic compatibility maybe, but isn't too closely related. You need diversity, but maybe some familiarity is good.
So finding someone who is familiar enough, genetically speaking, but still different enough?
Kind of like threading a needle, evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah.
Facial resemblance can be a subtle cue for that.
Interesting. And wasn't there another point about shared upbringing?
Yes, exactly. They also pointed out that historically, women and their brothers often grew up together very closely, even if fathers weren't always around.
Right.
So that intense familiarity during development might create a kind of subconscious template for what feels safe or desirable.
Okay, but we need to be really clear here. Like, the article stresses, this is not saying women are attracted to their brow.
Absolutely not. Crucial distinction. It's about potentially being drawn to similar facial features on an unconscious level.
Just cues, not the person themselves.
Precisely. And it's also important, this isn't some universal rule. It's a pattern found in research. Not every woman is going to pick a partner who looks like her brother.
Of course. It's a tendency, not destiny.
Right. And interestingly, the researchers even speculated that maybe a similar thing happens with men and their sisters.
Huh. Another layer.
Ugh.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this deep dive up. We've covered quite a bit.
We have. So key takeaways seem to be: women likely think about sex more than they might consciously track.
Yeah, that 19 versus 6 number really sticks.
Then their patterns of attraction seem potentially more fluid, less strictly category-based than maybe we assume, or compared to men's patterns.
The generalized energizer idea.
Exactly. And finally, this really unexpected finding about subtle facial resemblance between partners and brothers, possibly linked to evolutionary factors.
It definitely challenges a lot of common assumptions, doesn't it? Gives you some real aha moments.
It does. It just reminds you how much is going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Influences we're not even aware of shaping our desires and choices.
Absolutely. It makes you think. So maybe for you listening, it's worth pondering. How might these subconscious currents be playing out for you?
Yeah, or the relationships you see around you. Are there patterns maybe you hadn't quite clocked before?
What other hidden factors could be shaping our intimate lives in ways we just don't realize? Definitely some fascinating food for thought to carry away.